Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Monday the 13th of May. So, what we've got in store for today? Well, there's not a great deal on the news front today. It's a relatively modest day in terms of news. As ever, we do have some Fed speakers. Everyone's hanging on what the Fed speakers are saying. There seems to be more erring on the hawkish side in terms of holding US rates longer at the current levels than anyone thinking of really cutting them. So at the moment it's all dollar positive, if you like. However, tomorrow and Wednesday we've got inflation data coming out from the US. Now I don't know, I'd be surprised if they see the data long enough in advance to see what the expectation is there, but if those figures come out lower than expected, we could see the dollar sold quite a bit initially, quite quick movements, selling initially, only then for people to wake up and it to be bought back perhaps. But either way, there is quite some risk around those numbers when they come out tomorrow and Thursday. So that'd be 130, both of them. Right, so today we have got a German speaker there at 10 o'clock, financial minister. Sometimes that the financial ministers will move the markets a little, so just be aware of it more than anything else. Right, so not a great deal in the way of news, so let's look at the technicals. Now the euro has gradually been crawling its way back. It last week ran into the 50, then spent most of the week falling off there, picked up again on Thursday, fell back Friday. Is it going to have the legs to push on? Now when we come down to this 4-hourly picture, you see it's looking a little bit more positive, but you can see the higher lows a little bit clearer. Question, we're just short of it. It's a shame actually. It would be nice if we came back and just hit the weekly pivot and see the price reaction off of that, and that would be really what I'd look for this morning. See if we can get something coming from that. I wouldn't worry too much coming down to the hourly. We're just on the daily pivot at the moment. Coming back, just catching that weekly pivot and see if we get a reaction. I'd be more interested in that. With us, as I say, it's slightly against this bigger trend, but the intermediate trend is certainly up there. The pound. The pound, I mentioned a week or so ago that the pound had sort of, from a commitment of traders' point of view, from the big money, to me it'd been what a term as where it was in an extreme basis in terms of the selling that had occurred. Now we might see that turning around a little bit with the on these markets, but you look at last week, it was a real old struggle. To do too much. It did sell off. Question is has it got the legs to get up there today? Now it's already around its weekly pivot. Maybe a break above the Friday's morning high there, Friday morning high, or even just use last week's pivot as a sort of a bit of a guide. Maybe that will be somewhere in that region. Just see how it runs this morning. It's choppy and ugly on the dailies, and yet last week I was looking at a trade. I think it was on the euro, on the pound. No, it was on the euro yen. I was looking at it on Friday, and it just never happened. Some of these are just not happening. You just got to wait be patient. Same old there. US dollar yen. Be patient. I'll give it back quickly or slowly. Euro yen, we got this sort of bounce that came last week, well the week before last actually, wasn't it? Friday the 3rd, yeah. Last week it's continued up very slowly. Now it's just sort of running it. You see the momentum just petering out there, not really going anywhere too much. Don't like it. Aussie dollar, was wondering last week whether we were going to see more to the downside when we saw the correction. We saw it run into its supply areas, previous supply areas, and we did see a reaction off that, but it's a bit mixed as it sits at the moment, getting quite choppy. There was a sort of almost a double top on the euro there last week, and as I say, came off strong, but the 50 held it, 4-hourly 50 held it, just below its weekly pivot. Today, as we look at it for this week, we're just right on the weekly pivot, so we'll see. It could run up there. I mean, to me, it looks like a decent trade back towards the previous highs there, really. So it's certainly a potential. We'll see how that adjusts this morning. It would be wanting to be ideally above its daily pivot. It's quite ugly on this. In fact, this time frame, which sort of shown us lower highs and looks quite bitty on the hourly, drifting back down there. US dollar CAD, it'll have to be clean for me to take it this morning. Dollar CAD, I was just looking at this a moment ago. We seem to be this level I drew on here. It was only all these previous highs and lows that it's sort of run through. It's quite a pivotal area, though. You get these in the markets. I draw them on occasionally, and they seem to sit there for, it seems, forever. And this is one that's it's got quite a lot of hits around the area. I did draw it on quite recently, but when you go back, it seems quite significant as a number. Anyway, so it's around about 3606, 136, that sort of area we're looking at on it. As the price is running here, it gave us a lower high last week. On this daily picture, it's just come down to the 4 hours. As you see, just running down. It's in its there we are. That was the lower part of it. It gave us the lower high, then spent most of its time running backwards before it rolled over midweek. I quite like what it's doing here at the moment. Now it's run back into the weekly pivot. I'm sort of looking at this stage to see if we get a bit of a continuation this morning to the downside. It's just come down. Yeah, ideally again for me to get that confirmation, be below perhaps today's pivot. We'll look at the price action, but I do like this sort of movement into this pivot. But I'll be patient and wait for it to give me a bit more of a heads up. It's got quite a decent downside. Where's the pivot? The pivot's sitting around about 36.62. Oops, come back too far there. 36.62. Okay, so it's around about that 200. That's great. Break of that 200. And you can see there's a decent potential return there, and it's still above the 136 area. So yeah, there we go. A little plan. New Zealand dollar, or potential plan if it all comes out. New Zealand dollar. I've got this on the dailies, haven't I? Yeah, it has confirmed higher lows. We've seen a structural change on this New Zealand dollar effectively. It's whether or not it can continue. It runs out of momentum quite quickly often. Now it's just below its week. I don't fancy it too much with that. Say it's a lower high. It's not a confirmed lower high up here, but just don't like the look of it too much. Certainly on the hourly point of view, showing us lower highs, just that bit softer. So although here on the bigger picture it's potentially showing something that could break and continue, it's not for me yet. It might turn around a little bit better, but we'd need to see something really bad for the US dollar, I think, at the moment. Finally, the dollar Swissy. Just horrible as it's moving on the dailies here at the moment. It's not a tradable currency pair for me at this stage. Right, I'm going to leave those. We'll look at the cross pairs in the trading room in a short while. Look at the other markets here. Look at gold. Coming off this morning, had a good end of last week and was starting to look like it might push back towards its prior highs. Ran into its R2 last week there, and there's an old trend line I'd left on there. The combination, a bit of confluence of the two, so it came back there. I was more interested in the S2. S2's are pretty good points of resistance in this case. Sorry, S2, R2, beg your pardon. But they work as good resistance points. We'll see how it reacts. We can see how it reacts off its weekly pivot though. Looks quite decent there. Get a reaction off that. It could have further upside to come. Oil, another one that's dropped off on Friday. Now this is in a downward trend at the moment. It got a bit of a bounce coming just short of its yearly pivot there, but Friday saw it coming off quite strongly towards the end of the week. They didn't even catch the weekly pivot. And normally I like selling into weekly pivots, but not necessarily on a Friday. You haven't got much week left, but this would have, well, it's just, as I say, a little short of it anyway. But we'll see how it reacts this morning. It's just coming to the underside of this week's weekly pivot. I'd like to see what happens to the underside of the quarter. The daily's way up there as well. We'll see what happens, but I'm erring on the bearish side with what's happening here at the moment. Right, that's pretty much there. Let's just have a look at the S&Ps, the minis, continuing to push up here. These it might not be long before we see them taking into new highs territory. Bearing in mind now that the there's a lot of talk of interest rates not being cut until next year by some of the members of Fed. This looks like this is a bullish old run, unless some people believe differently. Anyway, higher lows, higher highs coming through here. Bit ugly on the dailies at the moment, but it's above the daily pivot. Pivot's very pinched today. Nasdaq, let's just have a look at this on the dailies here. Same sort of picture, the Nasdaq pulling up pretty well, and the Dow outperforming there, not far away at all from its all-time high there. Looking close home, the DAX was running pretty decently last week. It's off a little bit this morning at the moment, but well, it's not for the day. It's just pulled back on the shorter time frame, I can see, but it's running off. It's broken. It's made new highs there, and looking quite solid even. And FTSE's the same. We've still got the gap back here. We'll watch that at some point in the future now. I certainly wouldn't be looking to trade for it. Just need to see the market rolling back, and then it could be a target. But for now, pushing up, looking relatively solid. Right, I shall leave it there. I wish you a great day's trading out there in the world of YouTube. I'll catch you tomorrow morning. Take care. Bye for now.